The tragic real life and sad story of Orson Welles, man behind the legend. Orson Welles was one of the most multi-talented individuals in Hollywood history. As an actor, producer, writer, and director, Welles influenced radio and American cinema through his innovation and artistry, with many of his works still being studied and revered to this day. He was born in Kenosha, Wisconsin, on May 8, 1915. Welles lived with his parents until they separated 4 years later. Afterwards, both of his parents moved to Chicago, with Welles' father making a fortune as the inventor of a bicycle lamp and his mother playing piano at lectures hosted by the Art Institute of Chicago. Tragically, when Welles was 9, his mother died from hepatitis. Afterwards, Welles lived in Chicago with both his father and Dr. Maurice Bernstein, a family friend. While living in the Chicago apartment, Welles attended public school nearby. His father struggled with alcoholism and uprooted himself and Welles in favor of traveling to Jamaica and Far East. Upon their return, his father purchased a hotel in Grand Detour, Illinois, which eventually burned down. Welles and his father were faced with moving away once again. Welles returned to public school but in Madison, Wisconsin, entering into his 4th grade year. Later, he transferred to the Todd Seminary for Boys, an upscale school in Woodstock, Illinois. At Todd School, Welles studied under Roger Hill, an educator who allowed him to study on topics that interested him. As a result, Welles explored a passion for performance and working as part of various stage productions there. He would also execute his first radio performance through the Todd radio station, writing and appearing in an adaptation of a Sherlock Holmes tale. At the same time, Welles' relationship with his father was suffering. He vowed to stop seeing him, hoping that this would encourage his father to stop drinking. Sadly, his father died of heart and kidney failure soon after, leaving Welles with a sense of guilt. Welles graduated from Todd and was awarded a scholarship to Harvard University. However, he opted to travel instead and briefly studied painting at the Art Institute of Chicago. He would also return to Woodstock on occasion, considering it his home. In fact, when he was asked, "Where is home?" in a 1960 interview, he replied, "I suppose it's Woodstock, Illinois, if it's anywhere. I went to school there for 4 years. If I try to think of a home, it's that." Welles continued his travels thanks to an inheritance and arrived in Ireland, where he walked into a theater and insisted that he was a Broadway star. Though in disbelief, the manager was impressed and allowed for Welles to make his stage debut at the Gate Theatre, opening the door to a variety of supporting roles and work in stage production. Welles soon returned to the U.S. and initiated a writing project at Todd School, which would become the Mercury Shakespeare. Welles became active in a network of writers and hoped to become part of a repertory theater company. Welles' first radio job was for the American School of the Air. In the same year as his first paid radio role, Welles produced a drama festival with the Todd School in Woodstock, Illinois, inviting actors from the Gate Theatre to appear along with various New York stage actors. He would also film his first short, The Hearts of Age, at a firehouse in Woodstock, in addition to performing at the Woodstock Opera House. Welles frequently traveled from Woodstock to New York, where he formed relationships with actors who would later be integral to his Mercury Theatre. He was also active in many facts of radio, though often going uncredited for his work. However, it was Mercury Theatre's radio adaptation of The War of the Worlds by H. G. Wells October 30, 1938, that truly cemented Welles as a radio star. His performance and script detailing a Martian invasion was so convincing that it panicked audiences all over the nation. Soon enough, Hollywood offers began to come in for Welles. After commuting from coast to coast, he signed a film contract with RKO Pictures in August 1939 and transferred the production of his radio show to Los Angeles. Welles enjoyed creative control and the ability to have final cuts of his work. Though RKO rejected the first 2 film proposals from Welles, they agreed to Citizen Kane, 1941, which would go on to receive high praise from film critics and become his most notable film. In addition to co-writing the film, Welles also produced and directed the film, garnering 9 Academy Award nominations. Citizen Kane was followed by The Magnificent Ambersons, 1942, and Journey into Fear, 1943. In 1943, Wells's work for the radio shows Ceiling Unlimited and Hello Americans was complete, and Welles was enjoying income from his films and radio roles. As a result, Welles was able to pursue his dream of organizing a show that combined circus acts and magic for the War Assistance League of Southern California. Welles invested much of his own money in the show, entertaining members of the service and raising funds for the War Assistance League. The development of the show coincided with the resolution of Wells's oft-changing draft status in May 1943, when he was finally declared 4F unfit for military service for a variety of medical reasons. "I felt guilty about the war," Welles told biographer Barbara Leeming. "I was guilt-ridden about my civilian status." He had been publicly hounded about his patriotism since Citizen Kane, when the Hearst press began persistent inquiries about why Welles had not been drafted. At intermission September 7, 1943, KMPC Radio interviewed audience and cast members of the Mercury Wonder Show, including Welles and Rita Hayworth, who were married earlier that day. Welles remarked that the Mercury Wonder Show had been performed for approximately 48,000 members of the U.S. Armed Forces. Welles and Hayworth divorced on November 10, 1947. During his last interview, recorded for the Merv Griffin Show on the evening before his death, Welles called Hayworth one of the dearest and sweetest women that ever lived, and we were a long time together. I was lucky enough to have been with her longer than any of the other men in her life. Prior to his marriage to Hayworth, Welles was wedded to Virginia Nicholson for 6 years. After divorcing Hayworth, Welles would later be married to Paula Maury for 30 years. Each of his marriages produced one child. His children were Christopher Wells Feder, Rebecca Wells Manning, and Beatrice Wells. In addition to launching a massively successful career in film, Orson later took on several television projects. One series was Orson Welles' Sketchbook, featuring Welles drawing in a sketchbook and sharing anecdotes with the audience. Around the World with Orson Welles, which showcased his travels throughout Europe. Welles returned to Hollywood and continued working on his own projects while making guest appearances for Dick Cavett, Johnny Carson, Merv Griffin, and many more talk show hosts. On the evening of October 9, 1985, Welles recorded his final interview on the syndicated TV program, The Merv Griffin Show, appearing with biographer Barbara Leeming. Both Welles and Leeming talked of Wells's life, and the segment was a nostalgic interlude, wrote biographer Frank Brady. Welles returned to his house in Hollywood and worked into the early hours typing stage directions for the project he and Gary Graver were planning to shoot at University of California, Los Angeles the following day. Welles passed away sometime on the morning of October 10, following a heart attack. Orson Welles' centennial occurred in May of 2015, and his hometowns featured many Welles-related events. Despite the fact that his centennial events have all occurred, many places of relevance to Welles still remain. Orson Welles lived with Dr. Maurice A. Bernstein at 1850 Kincaid Street in the Ravinia neighborhood of Highland Park during the late 1920s and 1930s. The present number of the home is 610 Kincaid Street. Rest in peace Orson Welles, goodbye legend.